especially given that today, 25th of November, is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It's important for us to note that as the International Peace Bureau, a network of peace organizations and peace-related organizations around the world works, historically, we have done so under the banner of creating a world without war. We have to know as well, of course, that that peace is not just the absence of war, but is so much more than that, and really the presence of justice, and that's something we have to build. But today's session, which focused specifically on sexual and gender-based violence in armed conflict, highlights one very particular trend that we've seen and that must be brought to the attention when we talk about war. Even what might be referred to as a just war, we have to know that there are victims of these conflicts of various types, and that especially women and children are innocent victims in these conflicts, which is something that we simply cannot stand for. And we need to raise attention to this injustice that we see in war zones. We need to combat it. And we have today really an amazing panel of women that have women and men who have led the charge for gender justice when it comes to war. So with today's mark as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, here it's worth noting a few different trends that the UN highlights in this International Day, including very importantly that 70% of women in conflict, war, and humanitarian crisis experience gender-based violence, and that globally, an estimated 736 million women have experienced physical and/or sexual violence. The girls are at particular risk of violence, with 1 in 4 adolescents having been abused. So we understand this is not limited just to the topic of war, but we would like to focus today on some of these armed conflict zones in particular, where we're seeing violence and we're seeing a movement globally for peace in these conflicts, that we can learn a lot from those who have been doing work on the ground for eliminating violence against women, and that this is an important part of our international struggle to listen, to learn from one another, and to find ways also not to just focus on the violence itself, but also what follows and how we recover, how we move on from the violence and have resilience and create a brighter future and prevent such atrocities from being repeated. I can say personally, I'm really, really excited, if I can use that word. Maybe it's not the best word, but I'm very excited to learn from all of our speakers today and the excellent work that they've been doing, the experiences and the knowledge that they have, and is something that we hope can be very useful to our international movement for peace. So thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I'll turn the word back over to our co-hosts for today.
Thank you, Sean. We can now begin with panel. So I'm Ljubica, and first I want to say thank you for everyone for joining us today. And first I want to apologize in advance for if I mispronounce somebody's name or surname or both. And before introducing our first panelist, I want to share how meaningful it is for me, because this topic, we speak about this topic on this day, like Sean says, it's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So I think that is really important to create space when we can exchange our ideas, connect, and show solidarity with diverse struggles around the world, thereby expanding our knowledge, actually our collective knowledge. So I have a few questions for each panelist, and as soon as I introduce the panelist, I will immediately ask the questions. If necessary, I will repeat them, and participants also can post questions for the panelists in the chat during the presentations, and we will address them later. So we are honored to open this panel with Randa Siniora, General Director, Women's Center for Legal Aid and Consulting in Palestine. So, dear Randa, thank you for being here with us. And let's start. Could you please introduce yourself and provide some context on sexual and gender-based violence in Palestine today? And how do you support survivors and document cases of sexual violence? And additionally, what do ethics and an ethical approach means to you when it comes to documenting this form of violence? Randa.
Very much, Ljubica, for this nice introduction. I want to first of all thank everybody for the support. As the day of the international campaign of activism, the 16 days of activism starts today. We get more energy to support each other as feminists and working in globally in order to overcome this dangerous phenomena of continuous gender-based violence against women and girls. And I'm very honored to be on this panel. I am a director, I'm a feminist and activist for almost over 3 decades. I've been working in the field of human rights and women's rights, and I'm now running a very important feminist organization, the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling, WICLA, which is a Palestinian feminist organization working in the occupied Palestinian territory. The organization was started in 1991, and it has been providing legal aid and counseling to women victims of gender-based violence and providing protection for the victims, but also working closely with grassroots organizations and community-based organizations to overcome the problem of gender-based violence, discrimination, and lack of gender equality in our society through patriarchal structures and colonial occupation and the intertwining relationship between both of them. And as I'm speaking today, a genocide war is being conducted, is unfolding against my people in the Gaza Strip, where serious war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide acts are being conducted against everyone, but disproportionately impacting women and girls. Most of the casualties and the victims, or 70% of the victims and casualties, are women and girls or children. And that's really entailing the implications of the ongoing military aggression against the Palestinian civilian population in the Gaza Strip since 7th of October of last year. So we're now almost a year and 2 months or 3 months since the war on the Gaza Strip. And we've seen both women's resilience and their working on the grassroots level with their own communities and trying to provide psychosocial support to the victims, especially to victims of all forms of violence, but including sexual violence. Maybe I would like very briefly to share with you, just to put it in context, the phenomena of sexual violence. While there were threats of violence, molestation, and so on, always during the years of Israeli military occupation, and we're here talking since 1967, we're talking almost 5 decades of Israeli military occupation. In this genocide war on the Gaza Strip, it has been noticed that there has been an acceleration of using sexual violence against women and girls, kidnapped women prisoners. I'm saying kidnapped because we don't know their whereabouts, have been subjected to sexual violence, including rape. And that was really systematic to the extent that we have not, it's unprecedented. We have not seen that happening before. And therefore, it has been obviously accelerating during this last genocide war on the Gaza Strip, ethnic cleansing, almost 2 million Palestinians, out of the 2.2 million Palestinians, almost 90% of the population have been forcibly displaced into shelters in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, where they were resorting for a safe haven, but there's no safe place in the Gaza Strip. This also entails additional increase in sexual violence against women, but the women and girls, especially in the overcrowded places without privacy and so on. But most importantly, that the Israeli military occupation have used that as a tool of war against our Palestinian people. So I just want to share with you the screen. I won't go into the whole presentation, but just to share with you some of the issues and speak about the challenges that we face as Palestinian women under the current Israeli military occupation. And I mean, it is more than a conflict, it's a war. And therefore, the results are long-term results. And many of the Palestinian women who have been released from Israeli prisons after the military raids on the Gaza Strip have been also provided with psychosocial support. While this was happening, we have seen also a lot of attempts of steadfastness and resilience, and women leaders in the Gaza Strip have taken the lead, even if they have been displaced. Wherever they were displaced, they have taken the role of providing support and psychosocial support specifically to the victims and empowering them or partnering with them, as my colleague will like to use the word, in order to change that, make a shift, and try to work with them. I must admit that it is a very new phenomena. We are very good at monitoring and documenting sexual and gender-based violence within the family and within our own society, specifically domestic violence, and up to cases of femicide, but also cases of sexual violence within the family and within our own society. But with this unfolding war on the Gaza Strip, now we are seeing and documenting cases where we are trying to use as a strategy our experience over the past 3 decades and more in monitoring and documenting and working closely with the victims, and at the same time encouraging them to be agents of change in their own society in order to overcome the traumas that they passed and become agents of change. Now, this experience was in a different context. This time, as I said, in an unprecedented way. We are trying to look at that with new challenges that we have not witnessed before. Because at first, in a patriarchal society, we were first and foremost, looking at the structured patriarchy and the power relations in society, where we were trying to, within a cultural, social constraint environment that does not believe in gender equality, and women and girls do not have the power, but we were very much expert in that field. But monitoring and documenting Israeli sexual violence and against Palestinian women and girls has been new phenomena with new challenges. Among the new challenges is the fear of retaliation by the Israeli forces. Many of the women are afraid that there will be retaliation, and therefore they are not speaking out. Survivors and their families often fear reprisal from the Israeli authorities, especially if their testimonies are seen as politically sensitive or critical of occupation practices. This fear discourages victims from sharing their experiences openly. Social stigma and exclusion and family restrictions. Also, sexual violence is heavily stigmatized in many communities. Survivors risk being ostracized, judged, or blamed by society or even their own families. This stigma not only silences victims, but also exacerbates their trauma by leaving them isolated and unsupported. Thirdly, the restrictions that are being imposed on movements and checkpoints, military checkpoints by the occupying power and the occupation's infrastructure, including the checkpoints, permits, and other mobility restrictions, significantly limit the ability of survivors and field researchers to meet in safe and secure locations. Fourthly, and not least, not less important, are our field researchers' fear of retaliation by the Israeli military occupation, and individuals documenting the sexual violence, especially field researchers, face the risk of retaliation or harassment by Israeli forces. The work of documentation is so sensitive, but also not only within our society, but also because of the Israeli policies and the fear of retaliation that these women might witness. In the documentation, we had to go through further training and capacity building of our field researchers, especially in the Gaza Strip under the current unfolding war or genocide war on the Palestinians, to ensure first and foremost the safety and security of the victims. While it is very important to gather the information and field research, the caring for the safety and well-being of the victims is the foremost and the most important issue that we have to take into account. We try to be anonymous, not to mention names, if that is threatening the lives and the privacy of the women, especially in a small society like ours. Efforts are also made to to make sure that we are saving the information in safe places and protecting the information with development in technology and with the surveillance policy of the Israelis to track us and to follow up, especially on human rights defenders. We have to find a way to protect the information, and we have to be mindful in our documentation. Our field researchers receive training on how to document sexual violence cases diligently and securely. This includes being aware of the culture of culture and the sensitivities included, using trauma-informed approaches, and employing secure methods of recording and storing data. Finally, I want to say, linking survivors to psychosocial support. Survivors are connected with organizations who are specialized in providing psychosocial support. The services aim to help the survivors process the trauma and regain a sense of agency and dignity in order to further work with them within local communities and in our society. We're still in an unfolding war, so while we are trying to look at humanitarian issues and safety and security of the people who are being still targeted on daily basis, we try to also to look for advocacy support, advocating for safer channels of documentation and stronger support of networks within communities that can gradually reduce the stigma around sexual violence. This includes fostering awareness campaigns and building trust between survivors and support organizations. From the experience of our previous work with women victims of sexual violence within our domestic violence and society, we try to empower these women through peer-to-peer programs and through finding the safe environment to speak out. I'm mentioning that especially that maybe all the eyes are, and rightly so, is on the Gaza Strip, where the war is still continuing. There is a subtle war in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the Israeli sexual violence is not only exclusively in the Gaza Strip against the Palestinian women, exposing their private life, exposing their internal, and raiding homes and, exposing their, their underwears and lingerie and so on, and speaking about them in a negative way, saying that we knew that Palestinian women are sluts. quote unquote, and therefore they are putting that on Telegram and social media and being proud as Israeli soldiers. Although they speak about ethics, there's no ethics at all in that. Similarly, we're witnessing that at Israeli checkpoints in the West Bank and Jerusalem, and with Palestinian political prisoners, even in all Israeli prisons and detention centers. So this is not only exclusively for the Gaza Strip, it's happening in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and East Jerusalem, all the occupied Palestinian territory. And therefore, we're trying to navigate our way, how to work with women victims in order to ensure that they are not foreseen as only victims, but also agents of change. And therefore, we're putting that effort in that direction and working at the international level with the special representative of the Secretary General, Mrs. Pamela Patton, in order to highlight the sexual violence to which Palestinian women are being subjected, because at the beginning, the special representative of the Secretary General in armed conflict on sexual violence has not seen the Palestinian victims, and we've seen double standards in dealing with us. So we tried to work with her and continued our advocacy work in order to include also Palestinian women who are being subjected to forms of sexual violence, rape, and molestation, and other forms of sexual violence. I'm sorry if I was a bit long and beyond my time, but just wanted to put it in context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randa, very much. And everything is okay. Timeline is good. So our next panelist is Marijana Senjak, psychologist and counselor at the Center for Victims of Sexual Violence, Women's Room. She is a long-time activist advocating for the rights of survivors of the war. So survivors of sexual violence during the war, and it is actively involved in the regional initiative Women's Court Feminist Approach to Justice, related to the process of preparing witnesses for public testimony and creative feminist models for building peace, justice, and accountability. Marijana, could you please share more about your work and your experiences? What can you tell us about patterns of sexual crimes, actually sexual violence during the war in Yugoslavia? And as a therapist, based on your experience, what does it truly mean to apply ethical principles in our work? Specifically, what does it mean to be guided by the principle of ethics of care when working with survivors of sexual violence? And how we collectively create alternative and transformative models for justice?
I would like to greet you all. I hope that you hear me well. To greet you all on behalf of all clients of Women Therapy Center Medica Zenica from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also clients from Center for Victims of Sexual Violence in Zagreb, Croatia, and also on behalf of my colleagues and of mine. I would like to express my solidarity with all colleagues who participate on any way to today's panel, and our thoughts are very often with their work in conflict zones, knowing from 1993, from time when war started in former Yugoslavia, and especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, what life looked like, and how we decide to give our professional and human contribution to help women who survive sexual violence and other forms of trauma. establishment of Women Therapy Center Medica Zenica in the midst of the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina started with, I can say, women's feministic solidarity when Monika Hauser, feminist gynecologist from Germany, decided to came to Bosnia and Herzegovina and to establish Women Therapy Center. It was her motivation, how she would like to speak in her own words, like in the beginning, it was my range, and I decide to interfere with all this dramatic situation and with will of gods of war. And she engaged local professionals, and we started pioneer work in establishing shelter for women who survive sexual violence in the war, to establish the psychological support, legal support, and then according to the needs of survivors, and we can say very often with open hands, to really to search the needs from the reality of our clients in outreach, in field work. We had open hands to create methods and forms of support. So center grow very fast. From a clinical therapy center, in next 3 months, we established the so-called working projects for professional training in upholstery, tailoring, in sense of some additional courses in working therapy. And also we established the kindergarten for children of our client survivors. And in some stages of our work, also the apartments, housing in the community, where they connect again to their husbands and connect the family after their husbands were released from the concentration camps, prisons. But the points of work to strengthen the power of survivors, besides all traumatization, what look in acute phase with very strong fear, in sense that women who came to the shelters couldn't sleep and feel traced by perpetrators, and had a very high hyperarousal, and couldn't concentrate, and felt a lot of threats or new losses what came by the news from the first front lines, and couldn't overcome their own suffering by new traumatization what comes on ongoing war, like we all know who lives in ongoing wars in your countries for 12 years, for 20 years, for more than 50 years, and it comes like constant traumatization. The principles of work comes with establishing safety. It means with first identification. We had field work in refugee collective centers, and we perceive and we proceed to the groups of refugees with offer on lecturing on trauma consequences. And they were mixed, very wide groups where, in fact, women who survived sexual violence didn't attend. And at the end of those encounters, some elderly women told us, like, go to room that and that number and visit one woman. She felt very, very very bad, or she's in bad psychological condition. And identification came, I can say, from wide range of information and come like a tire that we identified by talk of other people. And Women Therapy Center is wide title, like in Croatia, Center for Women War Victims, and it doesn't target publicly women who survive war rape. And we had a lot of discussion. Monica Hauser, as feminist gynecologist, taught us to really use word like it has the deepest meaning. It is rape. Yeah, and ethnic cleansing is euphemism for genocide. But we were very, very careful how to approach our communities. And first announcement of the center were by radio, because in that time, 30 years ago, the other forms of broadcasting didn't work, in fact. And we approach like invitation for women who survived different war trauma. And really, they were multiple trauma, concentration camp torture and concentration and torture and war rape in house imprisoning. And also they lost close members of their family. They were refugees and expelled from their homes. So we open the identification to different sorts of trauma, and the cover of name of the center, Women Therapy Center, include all of those categories, and any category wasn't pointed in that sense. Security issues and safety issues, like Randa said in the beginning, were also very important to us. And I can say that strengthening, that overcoming the trauma start when one survivor decide to tell their story to one person of confidence. Her recovery, I can say, started on that point when she overcome isolation and when she decided to tell person of confidence, either professional or in other capacity, a person of confidence, what she suffered and what she passed through. We also put a lot of efforts to keep documentation on safe on safe manner and on safe place, I can say, because we know that our clients are potential witnesses of war crimes, and that we also who provide support are next to them. So safety was one of the very important issue, especially in that time where state institutions were not functional, and when women who want to, even if they want to report about sexual violence they survive, we can say that in state forces, depending on national side from which women came, were not confident enough to report. And I would just emphasize 2 points what Mina and Ljubica asked me before. Beside providing immediate support and the long-term support, we decided to provide education for different women's groups, civil society groups, state institutions, to try to do on causes of sexual violence and on prevention of future, I can say, commitment, execution of the violence. And 13 years after the beginning of the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we started a public campaign called for dignity of survivors, we started fight for recognition of socio-economic rights of war rape survivors. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Act on Social Protection, we succeed to amend the special category for women who survive sexual violence in the war, and they were entitled with some monthly compensation and with some wide range of rights, like on priority employment, on medical rights, on scholarships for them and their children. And similarly, in Croatia, 25 years after the war, in Croatia, we also succeed with engagement of international organization and some domestic institutions and single women and women who came from women's organization to contribute that Croatia adopted the special law on survivors of sexual violence in the war, where rights of women, survivors of sexual violence in the war, were recognized, and where wider range of rights were established for them, like monthly compensation and some one-way compensation, what is some decent amount. It is not real reparation, but and of course that it cannot compensate all suffering they pass, but this is some decent compensation. And in some discussion we can talk about what women decide with this finances when they get it. What do they plan with that? And some medical insurance, some advanced coverage, some immunological examinations and treatment against fertility and STD diseases. Also, some other rights are prescribed by this law in Croatia. And I can say this was achieved by engagement of different actors, especially of women's organizations. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina also, it was a huge campaign where 50,000 signatures were collected. It was a huge support for recognition of the women who survived sexual violence in the war, because in 2006 on Berlin Film Festival, in that time young director Jasmila Žbanić with film Grbavica won the prize, and everybody in Bosnia and Herzegovina wanted to be the part of that success. But we had collaboration with Jasmila from before. We collaborate on the script, and we wanted to start it campaign before it won the prize. And what was the benefit of such a huge campaign? That this topic and the suffering of survivors of rape in war were publicly recognized. And anti-stigma campaign, we can say. And then you can saw in different countries some similar film festivals or documentary festivals, or public work was more intensified. And just at the end of this presentation, I would like to emphasize the ongoing solidarity in between women's groups from former Yugoslavia region. Even in the beginning of the war and later, we stay connected, and from all these broken countries, besides closed borders and lack of communication in between us, but we succeed to maintain our relationships in spite all nationalistic divisions. And it was also part of our strength, and I just can illustrate. For instance, Center for Women War Victims from Zagreb, Croatia, act like shelter for women from Bosnia and Herzegovina who survived war, raped, who were transferred on protected way to third countries, to European countries or the other countries in the world. And we succeed to organize in 2015 women's court, alternative form of people's courts, people's tribunals, but our was feministic court, alternative form of justice, where the aims and definition of feministic approach to justice also mean recovery, also mean compensation to the survivors, also mean, and we ask that the women's courts political responsibility of the decision makers in our countries. So it's not court what sue the perpetrators, but it is a court where 35 witnesses from 7 countries from former Yugoslavia gave their testimonies at 3 days of public hearing, and different panels were established in Women's Court Feministic Approach to Justice. One was the war crimes and militarization. The other was women field as battlefield, sexual violence in the war. Third was about ethnic crimes. And because long time of beginning of the war passed in that period in our region, forms like economic violence, what came with transition in our countries, transition from socialistic way of society organization to capitalistic justice, where women, capitalistic society system, where women lost a lot of jobs and became more and more poor. Also were one of the topics and one of the panels in our, and also genocide, what happened in different parts, but especially in Srebrenica in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Vukovar in Croatia were the important points of women's courts. So I would stop here. I hope that I wasn't too long, and I'm open to any sort of discussion and the questions what could come late.
Okay, thank you, Marijana, so much. So now I'm going to introduce you Fatima Medani, partnership policy advocate. Dear Fatima, thank you so much for the opportunity to learn together. Where is Fatima? Yeah, you're here. So I would like to ask maybe similar questions, but a little bit different. So how can we all together create alternative and transformative models of justice? What does this concept mean to you? And what is the role of sustainable partnership in creating a peace and a rebuilding community? So, or could you share more about the role of women's group mobilization and its intersection with post-conflict recovery? Also, could you tell us more about the impact of conflict-related trauma on communities, focusing on how women's civic engagement is vital for building resilience and supporting survivors?
Thank you, Ljubica, and thank you everyone for being here today. As much as I'm sad that we keep having conversations each year and we keep having new conversation each year about this topic is actually heartbreaking. But I'm very happy about the angle that we decide to look at the sexual violence that we took today. And thank you, Ljubica, for the great questions. Answering your first question regarding the transformative models of justice. Um, for me, when we talk about transformative justice, we talk about shifting the narrative, as my colleagues just mentioned, which is shifting the narrative and positioning the survivors from being victims to active agents of change. And Sean mentioned the point. He said that violence is not peace is not the absence of violence. And I'll add to his point in saying that it's also justice itself is not just about the legal reforms, but it's also about community healing and recovery. And this is exactly what the women in Sudan and women groups, youth-led groups are doing in Sudan. So there are, up until this date, there are more than 200 documented rape cases. The recent violence wave that occurred in a Jazeera state left out more than 25 cases in Darfur state and 24 cases in Khartoum. Which is basically the most two affected regions regarding the sexual violence wave that occurred after the conflict in 2023, which is pretty alarming data. And this is only the documented cases. The undocumented cases, of course, are so much bigger. However, on the other hand, there are around 463 women group and youth group organizations working to defect the effects of war. Women groups specifically are creating safe spaces, creating shelters. They're providing sexual and reproductive health regulations. They are providing feminine hygiene products, psychotherapy support, psychiatric support. They are teaching home birth techniques. They are even collecting, analyzing, and mapping conflict sexual related violence data. So there are a lot of institutions and formal bodies and informal bodies that are currently working towards the conflict. Which leads us to the next point, which is the process. When we talk about transformative justice, we're talking about positioning women as the leaders. This is the process. But how the mechanism, it falls under the category of building sustainable partnerships. And for me, building sustainable partnerships kind of have two components to it. The first component is building local ownership within the community, which means that basically these girls that are being raped, gang raped, abducted, and all sorts of sexual violences usually tends to go to their own communities for support, either psychological support, medical support, any type of support. They usually tends to go to their local communities due to the lack of trust in local authorities and due to their impartiality, because they are part of the conflict and some of them are the perpetrator. So moving and shifting to the local and starting to build local ownership in the communities themselves help kind of create some sort of a safe space, and it also falls into the embedded solutions of within the cultural and social fabric of Sudan, and also most likely among all the countries that are the respective countries that we're talking today. And the other component in regards to building sustainable partnership is multi-sectoral engagement, because as we all know, when we talk about informal authorities, and after we establish trust, we need to make sure that these frameworks are sustainable, are in place, and we also need to influence policy, because we cannot just keep saying that, oh yeah, we need to engage with young people, and young women are doing an amazing job in regards to facing sexual violence, but then where is the empowerment come from? And the empowerment comes from Randa mentioned, by creating partners and positioning these groups as partners, but not as mere beneficiary of aid. As you know, the humanitarian aid is currently bridging over like 27% of the actual need that's happening in Sudan. The rest of the need is fully supported by the local community and by the civil society, because these groups have the ability to access women and girls who do not feel safe enough to come forward and basically make a claim for their perpetrator, because they are part of the regime. And according to the International Fact-Finding Mission by the UN, the report mentioned that the RSF is systematically using sexual violence as a weapon. So I think by creating and by establishing these frameworks and these sustainable partnerships, we do not just say that we need to empower women, but we actually give them the tools to be empowered through their own community. So just as a wrap up, because most of my colleagues covered most of the questions, but when we talk about transformative justice, we're talking about shifting the narrative from victims to survivors. And when we talk about women-led initiatives, we're talking about creating safe space, and we're talking about community healing. And when we talk about creating sustainable partnerships, we're talking about empowering the local solutions. And when we're talking about resilience and resilience building, we're talking about civic engagement and community recovery. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Fatima. Now I would like to introduce you Freddy Bisetsa, co-founder and executive director of Women Concern Congo. Dear Freddy, can you tell us about the work of your organization and in the context of sexual and gender-based violence? And how do you provide support to survivors? What challenges are you facing and how are you overcoming them?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you today, and I'm so happy to share the work we are doing with women survivors of sexual violence, and also learn from what our colleagues also have been sharing before me. And I know it will be such a connection that will help us to get a platform where we learn from, and even where we can share our the work we are doing. So without taking long, I would like first to introduce the organization with which I work, and as Ljubica said, I work for Women Concern, which is a feminist and non-profit organization under Congolese law. We are based in Bukavu. It's in South Kivu province in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And our organization operates under an environment marked by oppressive social cultural norms and within a zone that have been under conflict, under armed conflict for more than 2 decades. And those two factors, oppressive social cultural norms and armed groups, have been the key factors that have been exacerbating sexual and gender-based violence to women, because whenever there is armed conflict, women are the most victim of it, while they have not been among the planners. They are even not among the perpetrators or the implementers of the conflict, the armed conflict, but they are the ones to be victimized most. And we have a mission to support especially rural women and girls to discover their potential and to support them in their promotion, enhancing them in education for an inclusive development. We have a vision to get a society where the dignity of women and girls prevails. Before maybe I tell you about what we are doing with women survivors of sexual violence, I want to first to mention a little about the conflict we are living through. Yeah, our country is is big and have many other bordering countries, around nine of them. Especially in the eastern part of the country, we have the Republic of Uganda, the Republic of Rwanda, and the Republic of Burundi, who borders our country in the side part where uh, the conflicts have reigned during those two past decades. And also, I can mention also that our region is mineral rich, where we can find many kinds of minerals, including coltan, cassiterite, gold. There is also diamond and many other minerals, and all of those minerals are are fueling both economic interests and the cycle of violence because those minerals bring many actors from inside the country and other actors from outside the country who come to exacerbate the conflict through financing armed groups and empowering them and get a kind of security from those armed groups in a certain zone of conflict for them to be to extract minerals in an illegal way and export them in an illegal way. So those conflicts have been also having many humanitarian crisis consequences, as we can say that up to now we have registered, according to many reports, UN reports and other expert reports, we have more than 6 million deaths due to conflict-related causes since 1996. And we have also many displacements. For this 2024 alone, we have around 800,000 people in displacement conditions. If we combine those numbers with the other numbers of the past years, we are totalizing now around 7.2 million of internally displaced people, without talking about those refugees, those who have been who went to seek refuge in neighboring countries like Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. And then among those internally displaced people, we have women at 51%. And that is why I was saying that women are the most victimized by those conflicts. And those 51% live in conditions that that must expose them to gender-based violence and to sexual violence. And in our country, because of those armed conflicts, um, many reports have been mentioning how SGBV have been used extensively as a weapon of war. And some numbers that I can give you is that in 2024, there have been reported 685,000 report cases of sexual violence, numbers that continue to rise. And I can say that many humanitarians are not reaching those conflict reasons, conflict zones, so that it's true that many of the cases are not being reported. So those are the few cases that have been reported within those zones where humanitarian people, workers can reach. So apart from that, there is also a context of cultural obedience, which is very high, which is also another factor that supports the conflict to violate women. Yes. Then at our women empowerment center, we actually receive between 3 and 5 women each day. Each day, which means if you can calculate how many women a month, you will find that we have many numbers that we receive at the point that we can even not be able to support them as they can. And the other worst thing is that all those women whom we support like to come to our center mainly in Sundays because they fear to be seen by others, that they come to seek for a support. Because when they come during work days, weekdays, they will be seen by others, and people will know what happens on them. There, you will directly understand about shame and stigmatization that women are living in our country. So we have many challenges. Before I talk about the work we are doing, in supporting survivors of sexual violence in our region, our organization face complex and many demands that include resources and other capacity. And there I can mention those key challenges we always meet. There is first the social stigma and the marginalization. This is about how survivors of sexual violence face isolation. In that isolation, how it is worsening their trauma and building barriers to their integration and healing. And we have also a limited mental health service. You see, as we work in a rural area, we have we have a very big part of the region that where you cannot find even one support related to sexual violence or any other kind related to health facility that may support survivors. And even in our country where we are working, in our region where we are working from, we are also in lack of those trained people, trained staff that may be able to cover a huge number that we receive every day. So there is a scarcity of mental health services. And we have also insecurity, economic insecurity, the lack of financial support that increase vulnerability to poverty and exploitation, requiring significant funding to empower those people. And that I can say, when women mainly have been violated, raped, there are some of them who choose to keep quiet for many reasons, including one, if she decides to report the case, she will directly break out with the man, with her husband. And even if when she don't have a husband, she can be asked to the perpetrator to keep quiet so that he will be helping her with the money to live, and then she choose to keep quiet and be continue survive, continue living those consequences, including uh, many different of diseases. So there is economic insecurity, and there is also limited legal protection because of that condition of war in which live our country for many years. Uh, the, 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 the legal system is somehow corrupted. It is not working properly to support those survivors of sexual violence. But also there is a financial constraint for those humanitarian like ourselves who are working to support them. And we have an approach. Our work with survivors involves a comprehensive survivor-centered approach that aims to rebuild both individual and community resilience. At Women Concern, we have a belief that addressing sexual violence in war requires a holistic approach that provides survivors with both immediate relief and long-term support. And from the experience we have saved a key of strategies that include the integrated psychosocial support that provides trauma-informed care through counseling, group therapy, and mental health workshops to rebuild the resilience of survivors. Our second one is economic empowerment. We do what we call vocational training or skill development training, and we support them with the creation of small businesses and access to saving and credit facilities for their financial independence. This includes also financial integration, of course. And we have community sensitization and advocacy. There we engage with local leaders and organizing awareness campaigns to reduce stigma and promote gender equality. And then we do legal assistance and advocacy. We provide legal support to those women that need to get legal support. And we do advocacy also to facilitate reform to protect survivors. Um, um, what I can say directly is the impact we already have. We have already a total of 354 women who have experienced sexual violence, who have been received, who have received already psychosocial support, medical care, and assistance for their socio-economic reintegration. And we have 122 women who have already been trained in skills development, including soap making, tailoring, hairdressing, and many other uh, skills. And among them, we have also 150 women who are survivors of SGBV, of course, who are running actually their own and viable business. And among those who have already been trained and who have been receiving our support, we have among them 12 single mothers and SGBV survivors who have also started their own businesses. And we have also scarcity in our country, and especially for those victims, the scarcity of menstrual hygiene management. So we have already set also one washable and reusable pads that manufacture those reusable and washable pads. And there we have already distributed 3,600 reusable pads. And apart from that, we have some testimonials of women who already have been skills and have got support and already doing some businesses who already have some money that they gain and they are no longer independent. I think that is the work we are doing, and actually uh, we are planning also to have for those 5 years to come to provide mental health and trauma healing services to women victims and also to empower women through vocational training. Some numbers that we are targeting 5,000 women survivors in 5 years, and we target also to build our designated women empowerment center in Zimbabwe to replace that one we are renting actually. And also within this 3 5 years, we are targeting also to have um, women, 3,000 women to be empowered in skills development and to create 1,000 jobs. And also, we are also working to promote gender equality and women's empowerment. And our goal will be to support 3,000 women survivors of SDDV with access to education, healthcare, and economic empowerment. And then at the end, I can say thank you and welcome any questions you may have about the work we are doing. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Freddy. So finally, I would like to introduce you Cyrille, Roland, Bechon. I hope that I pronounced it correctly. Executive Director, New Human Rights Cameroon, and International Peace Bureau Council member. So, Cyrille, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. So I have 2 questions for you. So could you provide the general context of your work and reporting the cases? And from your perspective, what does justice for survivors mean to you in broader context of human rights? And if you want to say something else, you go freely.
Okay, thank you very much, Ljubica, for giving me the floor. And I want to thank first speakers, Freddy and others for all their talk. I mean, they said all what is really matters about sexual violence and also about the situation related to women's and girls' rights in the conflict time as also in the peace time, if we consider that peace is just when there's not open conflict. But really, I think the situation about sexual violence is a really it's a widespread phenomenon that we have every day, each time, each family in Africa and specifically in Cameroon. It's a phenomenon that destroyed women's and girls' life in peacetime. If we consider that peace, as Sean just mentioned, is just when there's not armed or open conflict. Now, in terms of war and conflict, I mean, sexual violence, we must add to sexual violence, sexual slavery, because most of the time, all this sexual violence happen in the context where women are being used as slaves also, and this sexual violence and sexual slavery is used as weapon of war in total impunity. So the question of sexual violence brings to me crucial problems and challenges related to access to justice for survivors. But what is access to justice for survivors in the context of war? What does this mean? For me, the first thing we have to put in justice is the recognition of sexual violence, as a weapon against civilians, a weapon against women and girls. This is the first thing. The second point is really access to judicial system, that are prepared to deal with this kind of violation. And then justice is also access to a judicial system that not just depend on some conditions, but the judicial system also depend on access to judicial assistance, access to lawyers, access to protect the judge, access to many other things that, without that, there will not be access to justice. Justice for survivor for me also means rehabilitation and reparation. In traditional justice system or framework, we talk about reparation and rehabilitation, different kind. You can have community or collective reparation, but you can also have individual reparation. But all this we must have. All this can happen just in a specific, context where we also have security, because justice also means that people, survivor can be calm, can have the space to express him or herself, and really how this context guarantee, that such violence will not happen again. So the non-repetition guarantee that will create condition, for this justice, and how security will create the condition for the justice. So you can see how all this matter of justice is linked in between them. But what happened, what we realize, unfortunately, is that states are failing to give proper responses to all these essential needs in reality, because most of the time survivors have to defend themselves. Because their suffering is denied. So instead of fighting for healing, they have to fight so that their situation has been recognized by state or by other actors. So the first condition of recognizing, the state or the situation of victims is not so easy, because in many contexts we have to fight to demonstrate and to say that this really happened, because actors are always in the situation where they deny the fact that this really happened in the in the framework of a conflict or in peacetime. So justice, yes, but the question for me is how to keep state accountable, for sexual violence, sexual slavery, and violence against women and girls. So I have been working on human rights and access to criminal justice for victims for more than 15 years now. So I can tell you that the case of Cameroon, for example, we still don't have a comprehensive definition of rape. I mean, the definition of rape in our national law, despite the fact that Cameroon has ratified many UN and AU treaties on women's rights. So you can imagine how big is the work of justice, because if internally, even the laws are the international treaty that have been ratified are not domesticated in national laws, and how national law are still far away from ratification. You can see what I'm talking about, the state's accountability, the state responsibility in protecting women and girls. We also have in Cameroon a context where law still permits discrimination against women and girls, in marriages, in access to work, in access to everything, because of patriarchy, as other just said before me. The Cameroon judicial system is not gender sensitive. I mean, I think we have this in many countries now, even in Africa or elsewhere, where so women who decide to go for justice have to be first really strong to accept to go for justice because of a lot of barriers. And at the end of the day, even if you have this engagement or commitment, the results are very, very thin. So there's no, people are not encouraged to really find for justice. And at the end of the day, you also need to face, the society, the community eyes, and regard that they put on you about one case or another. I think the other big challenge is also related to data. As Freddy just said, many victims or survivors don't want or don't accept to testify or to talk about their story. So at the end of the day, there are many cases that going not documented or because we can't just have more information about the case. So difficult to find justice, difficult to articulate advocacy or lobbying when sometimes you really lack information, because as in Cameroon context, I really work on monitoring and documenting human rights violation, and especially gender-based violence, but more especially again sexual and domestic violence. And I can tell you how it's difficult to bring, to convince a victim or a survivor to testify or to talk about her story in the way that you can use it. And that is the first point. And the second point is another thing that is very difficult to ask them to find for justice, because as I'm working as advocate, I'm a human rights advocate, so my work is to give them legal aid, judicial support. But really, on 10 cases, 8 we say that I don't want any judicial procedure. I just want to, to forget this phase of my life and to go through. Contributing to impunity because they don't want to contribute or to raise their voice in the case, because they are fear of sometimes reprisal, but also sometimes community, eyes on them. In the case of Cameroon, we have different conflicts. We have the conflict related to Boko Haram. As you know, Cameroon has a huge frontier with Nigeria. So Boko Haram is acting in both sides. And you also have a conflict with arms group in Northwest and Southwest. That is what we call Anglophone region in Cameroon, where sexual slavery and sexual violence in the context of those conflicts. But what before I close my speech, the other thing I want to raise is the situation of women's rights defender working on this work as me. Like when you monitor, you document, and you articulate on this topic, you also face really many threats. How first of all, the situation, the violation are under-documented because victims don't want to speak. But now, when human rights defenders want to help them and try to articulate on this, you also face threat from different actors. We can face threat from state actors. We face threat from arms group, non-state actors. We also face threat from communities, depending on, on the specific case, or depending on really the violation, you want to bring to public attention. So the other thing we must put in this reflection is how, women's rights defender we have more space, civic and democratic space, more space to help these victims and survivors to seek who seek for justice and who seeks for new life. The reality that we are oppressed in different sides. You have victims who don't want to talk, and then you also have people who want to help them to access justice or to even tell their story, that we are facing threat like every day from different parts. So for me, my reflection is really to close is to say, how could we hold our states accountable on sexual violence and also sexual violence at large? Because in the case of Cameroon, for example, sexual violence is very rampant. It's not just a matter of war. It's really like something that destroys women's and girls' life every day. So that is what I can add on what my colleague just said, and I say thank you and available to ask to answer any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this valuable insight. Now I don't see any question in the chat, but if someone want to ask question, you can freely just raise your hand or say something. Nobody?
Randa, you want to say something?
Yes. If there's no questions, maybe I say something, and that would encourage others to ask. You know, actually, with the presentations, I saw many things that are common among our presentations, despite the different context. When women and girls are subjected to sexual violence, women and girls are subjected to sexual violence, they are, afraid to speak out, and therefore their access to justice is being problematic with the lack of accountability. Taking what we've heard from the last speaker, it is very, very true that Cyrille, when she said that the lack of access to justice entails that we have to think about new strategies. I mean, we have to work on state accountability, because state accountability is the problem. And it's clicked in my mind how much, it is true that with the absence of state accountability, we're not going anywhere, because the legislation, laws governing our lives, access to the judiciary system, provision of free legal aid to the victims, compensation and reparation, and even the mentality of the judges who are looking in these cases. It reminded me of many of the cases of domestic and sexual violence against women that came to our Palestinian courts, that were then, after the first session, women withdrew the cases. They had the courage to go through the process until it reached the court. When they found that the judges were not really very serious about how they addressed that, and they thought that these issues could be addressed in a subtle way, because it is, quote unquote, shameful on the women to come up and bring these cases to the public in public courts. The women had to give up on their cases, and we didn't see them in the next cases, and they withdrew the cases. So many of the cases are challenged. So we have to think about alternative mechanisms to address this issue. Unless we address these issues with accountability and with closely working with the victims in order to make them, encourage them to speak out and really to contribute to change in our own society, and end the traumatization into which they have been subjected to, we're not going to be able to resolve it. As long as all the time we think about ourselves in our own communities, in our own conflicts, in the wars, in the situations. But yes, the problem of sexual violence and women, sexual slavery is at times of war and at times of conflict, and it's ongoing, damaging the lives of women and girls. And therefore, the strategies should take into account new alternatives. And maybe some of the speakers could give us, the experience of former Yugoslavia is very informative as well. We can learn from it. And as feminists, show solidarity with each other and try to find mechanisms and strategies that we can shorten the way for us through learning from the experiences of others. I am thinking of after the aftermath of the current war on Gaza. How are we going to work? Because actual war ends, but the human security and the women who are traumatized are going to live with that for much longer periods of time. So there's no time when there's real peace. And so the definition of peace and war is problematic to me, because these problems are ongoing, and recovery is not easy. It's not like automatic. It requires a lot of work, appreciation of the suffering of others, and trying to get overcome it in a way or another through recognition that this is not something that passes easily, and that women victims, in order to be able to become agents of change, they need our support as feminist and human women's organizations, and that we have to work together and learn from the experiences of each other. So as long as it looks like it's an individual case in this country or that country, we don't go very far. But when we look at it, there are symptoms of criteria that is global, and therefore global solidarity and global strategies, how we can also make them more fit in our, cater them or tailor them to our own societies is very important, because stigmatization, patriarchy, and all the problems that are entailed with the lack of access to justice in our societies, with the patriarchal structures very much enshrined in society, with our governments not taking the responsibility and accountability to these wrongdoings that have happened during war and conflicts, entails that we have to find means of solidifying our strategies to work, learning from the experiences and making them more fit in our context. I don't know, I just wanted to make this because the different presentations reach to the same conclusion, that access to alternative justice, maybe, or even within the justice, how much we need to work. The example of former Yugoslavia and Bosnia and Herzegovina in developing the law is very important, because it recognized that these are victims and they need to be compensated and rated for what happened to them. So that is very important. Also strategy, with the absence of access to justice to victims, what can we do, and how could we try to find other alternative mechanisms to deal with that?
So thank you, Randa. Thank you so much. And yeah, I would just like to say that I also catch all what you were saying about the symptomatic things that women just can't express themselves and say from different reasons to approach and ask for support. But on another hand, you all spoke a lot about what you are doing and how you actually transforming together. And for me, what was the most important was this kind of sustainable partnership and ownership of women, that we own our own experiences, and that we are what Fatima was saying, like shifting this narrative of victims to the active subject. But I would like to ask you a little bit more about for example, Fatima, if you can say how was it in Sudan, how was it to make this and to call it as this process of making sustainable partnership, and how it went, and also what this means for all of you in your work, this kind of approach, like where we go, what Marijana once said, shoulder to shoulder with women survivors in our processes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the question specifically. So you needed to know the procedure of how these relationships and partnerships is created?
Yeah, so when you were saying like that you adopted this principle of sustainable partnership, and for me that it was important to speak a little bit more about how that process went, and yeah, a little bit more about the process, and then also others to go a little bit deeper into what means this in all of your work for the other. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, the idea of building sustainable partnerships stems from the idea that there are already peace building processes and systems in place. So, for example, I'm just going to talk about the case of Sudan. So, as I mentioned, these youth groups and women-led groups and organizations, and organizations are doing different type of activities and different type of projects to come up with new strategies and new ways to defect the effects of the war. So these are already, by doing so, these women are already building the peace. This is a peace building process that's already established, already in there, already goes by the social and fabric rules of their communities. So I think the idea of building sustainable partnerships stem from this place exactly, that these peace building processes are already in place. Why not just collaborate and then build partnership in order to go both in hands? That's why there are two components with building the sustainable partnership, because you cannot support something that does not exist. And the local building local ownerships and local authorities with these communities is already established. These girls already trust each other. They do not wonder how are we going to support each other. They just make it work. So if something happened for a girl, for example, she just can text her friend or her group, and she reach out for the community, and the community answers. So of course, not in each situation. There are some still gaps that needs to be followed, but these gaps is present due to the lack of systematic partnership and sustainable partnership. And on the other hand, when I talk about multi-sectoral collaboration, so there is already collaboration is taking place. Organizations, NGOs, and think tanks, everyone is collaborating with these young women and youth groups. But the collaboration is not fair. The collaboration is some sort of also exploitation, because they use these groups and these young women basically to get more data, more accessibility, and then use this information for their own personal gain. This is not equal partnership, and this is not even inclusion. And I hate the word participation. I hate when they say women participation, because it is not meaningful participation, but more a form of tokenism. And this is exactly what sustainable partnerships kind of make sure that this does not happen, make sure that it's a fair collaboration between the both. Yes, we can tell you how exactly are we doing this, how exactly are we building resilience, and include your policies and strategies in the policies and frameworks that already exist and already in place, rather than come up with new ideas and everyone in the world, come together for big forums and then come up with new strategies every year, and nothing actually gets done, because it does not fit the context and it does not fit the situation that's happened. So I think this is why important and building sustainable partnership is very crucial to make sure that we do not have these type of conversations next year. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. It's what I mean, not what I wanted to hear, but yeah, that was my question. Thank you, Fatima. And I would just like to introduce you, my friend. We just came from the Women League for Peace and Freedom European meeting. It's Cyrille from Lebanon. Cyrille, do you want to say something? You said that your friend is here.
Yes. First, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Cyrille Gerdi. I'm the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Lebanon Section President. And I'm also with Randa Siniora. I'm very happy to see Randa Siniora as part of the steering committee and the Arab CSOs and Feminist Network. I'm so happy to see Shannon here and many others. Yeah. Okay, just no. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, do we have some questions, other questions?
Yeah, no, just Cyrille to finish.
Okay.
I would like to add, since we are talking today on the first day of this 16 days, that about the impacts of conflict on women. As we said, like in 1325, it's not only about victimhood, but also about the role that women play. But we want to stress two main things, and this is what I have been realizing lately. As Fatima was saying, the meaningful participation and what kind of participation, the tokenism in terms of participation. I would like us to raise two things, regarding the issue of armament and the issue that we need to play an impactful role in the processes, starting from the production of weapons, the selling of weapons, the exports of weapons, and the usage of weapons. This circle of destruction that is unfortunately is just not only leading to wasteful resources, it's destroying us, it's destroying the planet, and it's destroying the earth, and it's culminating in the climate change. We have seen this in Palestine, and we have seen this now in Lebanon. Definitely, Randa was talking about Palestine. I want to say today is 25th of November. The outrageous war in Lebanon started on the 23rd of September. So it's almost 2 months. And 2 weeks ago, we had the World Bank saying that this war cost $8.3 billion. So just see the resources that are being wasted on destruction. And this is a vicious circle of destruction, and then sending us some food to stay alive, and then working on the reconstruction, whereas we are losing all the development of the human being. So this vicious circle we need to work on as to protect us, and as a way of the prevention of any kind of conflict that damage or violence that has to do with the different forms of violence on us and on our bodies. And second one is, what are the roles that we are playing in terms of these processes? What is the process that is including women and gender sensitive approach? We are keeping on the same thing. Do we expect different results? If we're just having these men who are carrying the weapons to the table all the time, do we expect different results? And this is how we want, and this is was, if you would allow me, Mina, just to say one thing. One of the things that we came out of this European regional meeting, and I was invited coming from Mina to talk also about what is happening in Mina, was to say that what we need is not only a collective solidarity. It's time for us, all these feminist peace organizations, women equality, marginalized communities, LGBT community, all these communities that are marginalized, to work collectively together so that we can stop this war machine. And it's not stopping. It's not stopping. Today, just like to say that Marina and I, we were sitting, and I received a message that my hometown was bombarded, and she came out to support me. So I was just like, helpless. So with our helplessness, still we have our strength. And I would like us to spread the strength in the room, and how we can move this strength to the outside world so that we can work collectively, powerfully, to raise our voices. We need to raise our voices and help each other. Thank you. Thank you, Mina, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Cyrille.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you, and I hope it was okay for you also that we change a bit our dynamic of our panel. And I would like to ask, Shirin really raised one important question, so I would like to ask all of you, like, if you can say a few words about solidarity and how you see the solidarity in the context of justice for in this context for survivors of the sexual violence in the war, but generally solidarity in contributing to the general peace. So whoever wants to start, maybe we go different round, like Cyrille, Freddy, Fatima.
I think I can start. Yes. Solidarity for women concerned is a commitment to stand with survivors, amplifying their voices and fighting for justice on their behalf. Solidarity is not just about providing resources, it's about advocacy, acknowledging the lived experience of survivors, and pushing for systemic change. True justice is not only achieved in the courtroom, it is realized when survivors can live free from fear, supported by a compassionate and understanding community. Solidarity also means fostering partnership with like-minded organizations, sharing resources, and building a network of support that stretches beyond borders. We believe that by uniting across communities, regions, and countries, we can amplify calls for change and make tangible progress toward justice. So our work will continue to emphasize survivor-centered approach, promoting lasting resilience and advocacy for a future with women and girls, but through solidarity, through connections with other organizations in the same context of work with us. Thank you so much. That is what solidarity is for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddy. Thank you so much. Fatima, can you continue?
I want to.
Really, I want to add something. So maybe she can go ahead and then I'll go after.
Yes, Cyrille, please.
Okay. For me, solidarity is really the key for everything. When we talk about state accountability, when we talk about sexual violence, when we talk about patriarchy, we talk about culture, we talk about religions, you know, all that means we need to really be together, having the same message to people, because we have two fronts of our fight. We have the community side with culture, with religion, with everything. And then we all with patriarchy structures. We also have states with accountability, where we need to really advocate, lobby for change. So even in national, domestic aspect of the problem, we need to be together, as we just see today. From Palestine to Cameroon to Congo, we also have the same trend, you know, of the problem. Is we have the same problem. How could we have the same message? How could we stand together about what is happening? I mean, it's a key to go through this matter of sexual violence, sexual slavery, because as I just said, the sexual violence is not a problem of war, it's a problem of every day women and girls face in our countries, in silence, in total ignorance of what is happening. You know, sexual harassment, how girls can go school freely, how in universities, you know, girls are threatened, and one, you know, it's every day, everywhere. And I mean, it is almost for me a reason why we have this lack of women leadership in many spaces, because women are seen as sexual, you know, things. So when women start to raise her head, become her, it is good to touch, it's good to, you know, to frustrate with sexual harassment and everything. And you have a situation where in secondary school, in high school, you see how girls are very performant. But at some point, you see how the performance started to drop down. You can ask, what is the problem? The problem is, you know, the matter of harassment, society, pressure, you know, everything you can see every day. So for me, solidarity is, as we work as in IPB, you know, I think only what we do as IPB family is really solidarity. How IPB work to bring us together, like in Africa, in Europe, in other parts of the world? How can we bring our local problem to international agenda? I mean, it is important because I can lack money to be, let's say, at New York next year, but we can find out here how can we organize to have 1, 2, or 3% or all of us in New York in the status of the women meeting. How can we organize? How can we do something together to bring this message in? So really, for me, I think solidarity is the key for advocacy, for lobbying, and then for communities, for awareness, for everything. Having this kind of meeting where, we can have experience from Palestine, from Latin America, for everything, and for Africa, and then we stand there and we have the same message. I mean, it's a good and strong message for state, because if we are not together in front of states, I'm not sure we will have any change in in coming days. The change depends on how much we can stand together and talk about this thing. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Cyrille.
Maybe
Yeah, sure.
Marijana
We are
wants
about,
to give it to me.
yeah,
Okay, shall I go? Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
please.
it's great to see my friend Shireen in this event. It was like a shock to me, but it's so always nice to see you. Actually, I think that we really definitely need to look for solidarity. And there are as I mentioned, there are many common issues: patriarchal structures, lack of accountability, absence of impunity, the impunity which governments are enjoying, and therefore we have a lot to do together. We were contemplating in Palestine, where does the feminist movement stand with what is happening of genocide acts in the Gaza Strip? And we think that compared with other social movements, the feminist movement was not really very much engaged. Not that because it is our focus as in Palestine and as feminists that we want to see the world, but it really clicked something that if we speak about solidarity, then we have to look at where is the feminist movement when it comes to situations of conflict, war, and occupation, and how much we are fighting together in solidarity against militarization. Because the results of sexual violence and using the bodies of women as a tool of war is now becoming a phenomenon, not only in the occupied Palestinian territory, in Gaza and the occupied territory, but all around the world. And the experiences are being repeated. It's true that without war or with war, as is the situation in Cameroon, we talk about a lack of human security, and human security is the most important thing. And women's bodies are being abused, slavery, sexual slavery, and the abuse of the results are going to be long-term, and therefore solidarity is needed. And now we're having there are globally, we're talking about setbacks, not only in countries of conflict and wars and occupation, but generally gender equality is witnessing setbacks. So how could we address them in global forums? Now we have the OA with the conference coming, the 15th conference coming in Bangkok. We're approaching the review of the 30 years of the Bechon declaration and platform of action. We need to be more revolutionized and connected in solidarity in order to make our messages to the governments who are doing nothing. Not only in some contexts, they are very clever in going to UN Security Council and issuing UN Resolution 1325 and the subsequent resolutions. But when it comes to practice, governments are not doing much. How could we really engage in solidarity in global feminism and not only look at our individual cases? Because the commonality, what is common, What is shared with most of us is the same. And therefore, a world where there is no peace is not in the interest of feminist movements. It negates feminism, in my opinion. And therefore, there's a lot, militarization, wars, conflicts we are the victims, and therefore we are the agents of change. So without solidarity at the global level, we won't be able to achieve much. That's why I think there's a lot in common that we can do together.
Thank you, Randa. And we are approaching the end, but I would really like to hear from Fatima and Marijana what solidarity means for you. So maybe Marijana, if you can say something in a few sentences, and then we can finish with Fatima's words. And yeah.
For me, solidarity means that I can say their suffering is also our suffering. And this is a long-term approach, and it changed through their survivor's life path. And like Randa said, the consequences are long-term. So it means, like you quoted, Mina, really equally, not from the professional level, stand shoulder by shoulder in their life path. And I can illustrate from our work on long run, 30 years later, children who were born out of rape became actors of change, and still we are asked for certain support. And I can add what Randa said also. Very first, continuity of violence against women. It is from before war, during the war, and after the war. So all what we described, it is present in any of our countries. And we started very early to collaborate with ICTY and with regular courts, and even 30 years later, in our countries of former Yugoslavia, war crimes are not proceeded. And the definition of rape as a war crime, crime against humanity, and genocide were not present until 1995, until experience of ICTY. So now we are starting from the point where we have some as you all said, international policies, and I agree completely. Resolution 1925 and following resolutions are not put in place. And we can see this in our countries, in region like migrant women who are coming as survivors. We do not apply action plans, country state action plan to support survivors of sexual violence who are coming like refugees or survivors now. And I agree completely with you. All these organizations who protect human rights and women's human rights and civil society organization, peace building association, really I agree and support you completely in this your call for action, in fact, that we all unite and really start to, and I'm willing for this in certain networking.
Thank you, Marijana. It's always nice to hear you. Yeah, and Fatima, can you?
And welcome, Shireen. Wolf, by the way, is one of my favorite organizations when it comes to raising the voice of Sudanese women specifically. So welcome, and I'm very happy that you joined us. And I'm very also happy about the point that you mentioned of solidarity. And for me, solidarity kind of goes two ways. We can talk about local and national solidarity, and we can talk about the international or multi-sectoral solidarity, the one that Randa mentioned. So when it comes, I think, to national on a grassroots level, solidarity mean for me those women creating community kitchen groups, their community psychotherapy groups. They are creating, as I said, there are more than 500 or 63 women-led groups working towards different sectors in the conflict. So I think this is the manifestation of solidarity in local communities. these type of initiatives that bridge the gap of local. I mean, I can say of international mishaps. And then on an international level, I think solidarity means collaboration and building sustainable partnership. I'm going to say sustainable partnership till the day I die, because I think it's one of the most effective ways to ensure that women are put in a position of power. So when it comes to international and multi-sectoral collaboration and solidarity, it means giving these initiatives and groups the accessibility to reach for technical and even non-technical assistance. For example, someone in the chat just mentioned CSW, which is the Convention for Women. So, for example, if an organization that's actively working, for example, let's say sexual violence, and want to participate on a global forum such as the CSW, it will not be able to do so due to A, lack of their funding, C, lack of their registration. They be like, you're not registered as a organization in your government, which are all does not make any sense and do not fit into the context of the conflict. You are not expecting me to go and I basically crowdfunded some money to buy a bunch of pads for women, for example. It does not make any sense for me to go and register on a country that's literally does not have any government in it. So this is not only the issue. This has been an issue ever since Sudan was existed. The issue of exposure and international representation. So when it comes to building relationships with the international community and with other NGOs, when it comes to solidarity, it also means contextualizing the context and contextualizing why is these initiatives exist from the first place. So I think solidarity for me on an international level also calls for building partnerships, if I can say that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Mina, do you want to close, or if you
No,
have
I think
another
Cyrille
question?
wanted to say something. Cyrille? Yeah? You want? Do you want to say? No, you don't want?
Okay.
No, it's okay. Good.
Because I mean, we can continue if you want, and
no, Fatima said it all. Fatima put the point. Yeah, I was agreeing with her.
Okay. Thank you, but really, and this is not a phrase. I really think that for me personally, I again and again learned a lot, and it stays here in my mind. Maybe I didn't use these words like sustainable partnership. Maybe I had some others, but it stayed as something that would like to close with agency, with sustainable partnerships, with solidarity, and yeah, with this, how we wanted to organize this panel that is focused on transformative justice, which is exactly what it means, that we are not powerless, we are actually full of power, and we have and we do great things. And thank you for sharing all the work and all the knowledge that you have, and that we had this safe space, which is important to share it and to create it together. And I'm really happy that Shirin, I'm sorry that you didn't have more space and time to share but I'm happy that we had you here even for
yes,
this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing space.
Yeah. And I don't know, Sean, do you want to say something for the end? Ljubica?
Okay, if I can say something about solidarity, I think that is the opposite of that. So I think we are in the good space, and I am very thankful for knowing you, meet you actually. So all of you, and I hope that we're gonna stay in contact and share ideas and share opportunity to work together to have solidarity with each other. So thank you again. And now I'm gonna go. And Sean, if you want something to say.
I don't have anything to add. I think you have all said it very beautifully, and I also have learned a lot in this session. So thank you very much. Just maybe to say from IPB's, and we offer our solidarity and partnership, ethical partnership to all of you. We're so thankful for all of your hard work and your expertise. And just to say, we hope to continue on with these discussions to advance things. And support all of your very important work. So thank you.
Cyrille, you wanted to say? Okay. Okay. Thank you once more, and good night or good rest of the day. I don't know where. Bye.